Hi everyone, it's Lisa. Thank you for joining me today. I want to share with you a quilt project. It's not mine. I'm not smart enough or design savvy enough to come up with a pattern such as this, but Wendy Shepherd is. This pattern is called Betwixt. It's featuring willow fabric by Whistler Studios, and I will tell you the fabric is absolutely gorgeous. You may not be able to find much of it, as it is out of a collection that's probably run its cycle, but I found it at Hancock's of Paducah and I bought it on sale. However, before I did so, I actually revised this pattern somewhat and made it into another quilt project first, and I'm going to share with you what I did there. I will also put a link to this pattern in the notes below, and it's a free PDF, and I hope that you'll consider making it or being inspired by it. I found it to be immediately charming to my eye as the blocks appear to float upon the surface of this neutral fabric with these lovely prints. The block, I'm going to come in a little closer here. The quilt is basically made from 2 blocks, and they're 9-patch blocks on a grid. So this is the first block, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, and this is the second block. Now this second block is essentially an Ohio star, and you can see that, you can see that here, which is also a 9-patch, but it is in a frame setting. And that frame setting really allows it to float between the blocks. The other block is also a 9-patch, and it has an interior 9-patch that you can see here. And then it has 4 plain squares, and then it has a block that's called Mary's Triangle. And in other renditions of this block, you may note that this square is solid. In this particular quilt pattern, it is a half-square triangle. And as you can see, it produces a beautiful block pattern when it's set in the rows and columns. I used this quilt pattern to give me a systematic way to learn my EQ8 program, which I have. I rely on EQ8 because I can't rotate or imagine different colorways unless I see it. So I know it when I see it sort of person, and I just can't do that stuff in my head. So that's what I rely on EQ8 for, and having a systematized way to learn it by drafting blocks and putting them in settings is a great way to undertake that program. Here's the same quilt, and it's just in 2 colorways with the neutral background and the colored squares. And here you can see more easily the framing of the Ohio star and the block layout for the other 9-patch with the shaded 4-patch or Mary's triangles in the corner. Here's another rendition where I kept the Ohio star smaller, but I used a dark colorway, and I used gold. I have some really pretty gold fabric, which is, I believe, an Andover raindrops in gold. And I was trying to find colorways to use that fabric, which I bought at a heavily discounted price. And it's been sitting in my stash and looking to find a use for. Here's a colorway where I inversed the colors and made a dark background with the light patchwork blocks floating on that surface. And here's a rendition where I upsized the Ohio star and made it a full-size block, and I put a different colorway on the center of it. Now there's a very good reason for having the Ohio star framed as it is in the original pattern, and that's because there's a confluence of seams, as you can see on all of these things. So it really does require quite a bit of matching and seam pushing on this particular block, but I settled on doing the full-size Ohio square. In this particular rendition, I was just simply playing around with colors here, and as you can see, I think that this would also be a nice opportunity to make a very scrappy quilt if one liked, keeping homogeneous colors within the 9 patch, and you could also change this entirely and just make it a solid color or anything that you might like. But you can see, I think that it would lend itself to other renditions to help you use up fabrics that you might have. This particular rendition was, okay, what if I want to use up even more of my gold scraps, and I decided that this was a little bit too overwhelming even to my eye. But the other thing I wanted to point out, which is great about the EQ8, is that this happens to be the loading of the fabric that I have. The fabric that you see here that's blue and gold, I don't know if we'll be, I can't show it to you here, it's Laura Behringer's Paisley palette, and it's this beautiful blue and white and gold, which complements beautifully with this particular gold, but this is too much gold and I did not go that route. And here is an experimentation where I put the center square that's on this cross 9 patch into my Ohio star, and I didn't care for that. And what we see here is the color palette and block size that I settled on. And to my eye, it's going to be a beautiful project. I have made all of the blocks. And if you're wondering why I have videos on making half square triangles, I had to make quite a few of them. Not only do I have them in this corner block here, and these are very small ones, I have them in the Ohio star. So I had to make lots of half square triangles to make these quarter square triangles. Here you can see where I had some second thoughts, and I thought, well, what if I put gold in the corners of my half square triangles in this particular block? And I did not use this. I think it would be cute in perhaps another colorway, but it's not what I chose for my quilt. And if I had a fabric here that had more color dynamic, it's only got 3 colors in it, I might choose something that would be complementary and not necessarily the same block. But you can have a look and see how it does that and make choices for whether or not it's pleasing to your eye or not. Here's an experimentation where I simply took the 9 patch without the Ohio star and just lined them up together, and it's almost an unrecognizable quilt. But this is the quilt block. You can see here, this is the original quilt block, and this is where they intersect. Now, in doing block detective work, I would not make that 9 patch the way that I did. Rather, I would actually make this block as an economy block, because that's exactly what it is, and I would put rectangles, full rectangles here, all right? And then I would also make this this little 9 patch. I would do it from strips of fabric and then cut them out and put them together to make this 9 patch. And then I would again just have a block of fabric here and here and here, and that would help a lot. And I really like the uniformity of this colorway. It's just very simple, but it has a pleasing geometry to my eye. And I also like the way these unfinished blocks create a lovely little seemingly border on this fabric, with this fabric and for this quilt. And the last thing that I will share with you is that I did one more rendition, and if I wanted to make this block a little more complex, I would take this Ohio star and I would put a Mary's triangle in the corner. And you can see the effect that it provides by providing this little hexagonal framing for this star. And it would involve quite a lot of work, and frankly this was an exhausting quilt to cut in piece, and I have all the blocks done. I just haven't put them together in rows, but I did want to show you how making a small change to this block would also create that lovely framing. And that's something that you could consider anytime you're working with an Ohio star or any kind of star block where you've got these corners and you can start putting angular blocks in there to create this similar framing. So here's my final project, which went through quite an evolution of thinking, but in doing so I was able to learn many techniques on my electric quilt 8, as well as determine better construction techniques for some of the essential blocks in here so that I could save time and not sacrifice any type of accuracy. So I hope you found something helpful here on how you might play around with blocks and patterns, or even just make a beautiful quilt from free patterns that are available to utilize the great fabric lines out there and couple it with your imagination.